Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will hear an important challenge to President Obama's health care law, which is often called Obamacare. And that decision could have a major impact on the future of Obamacare in America. Here with us to tell us about what's involved in this case and why it's important is Ed Heiselmeyer. He's a senior research fellow for health policy studies at the Heritage Foundation. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks for having me.
This case is called King versus Burwell. What is it basically about?
There's a provision in the ACA, Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, that provides for tax credit subsidies to be paid to certain individuals who meet certain requirements in terms of income and lack of access to other coverage. That says that it applies if they buy coverage through an exchange established by a state. The Obama administration issued regulations that said, well, those tax credit subsidies would be available to people who purchase their coverage through an exchange run by the federal government in cases where the state hadn't set up one of its own, which is 34 states. So legally, this is a question of textual interpretation. The words of this particular provision, the context of the statute, et cetera. Those are the legal issues that are being fought over.
Go ahead.
Sorry, as a practical matter, if the court were to rule that the administration's interpretation was wrong, then there are 34 states where people would no longer be able to get these tax credits for buying coverage on the exchange.
Who brought this case and why?
Well, the case was brought by several plaintiffs from the state of Virginia, and the reason that they claim they had standing to sue is because the payment of these tax credits is linked to other provisions in the law, specifically in their case, the requirement that they have to buy coverage, the individual mandate. Now, there's an exemption to the individual mandate if the cost of the basic plan would be more than 8% of your income. But in calculating whether it would be more than 8% of your income, they reduce it, that's in the law, by the amount that you get in tax credits for that premium. So essentially, the plaintiffs are saying, look, we have incomes living in a state without an exchange that if no subsidies were available, we would be able to get an affordability exemption from the individual mandate. But because the subsidies are available, we now must either buy that coverage and pay the additional amount ourselves or pay a penalty for not getting coverage.
Is there any consensus among legal analysts on how the court might rule?
I'm not a legal expert, and you would have to ask the legal analysts about those kinds of questions.
Okay. Well, what would happen if the court rules against the administration?
Well, the immediate effect of this would be that those individuals receiving subsidies for the premium tax credits for their coverage in the 34 states would at some point, depending on the court ruling, no longer be allowed to get that money. So we're talking, in my estimation, based on the data for the 2015 enrollment that has come out from HHS, adjusted for what we saw in terms last year of people dropping off from, not everybody who enrolled actually bought the plan. We're looking at probably about 5.5 million people would be affected by that. That is 5.5 million people in the 34 states that are getting some amount of subsidy, could be as little as $1, would lose that subsidy.
And what should Congress do if the court rules against the administration?
Well, the point that we make is that this is just one more example of a law that has all sorts of unintended consequences and adverse effects for all sorts of people, and that Congress should not go around trying to, fix this or patch this up. What they need to do is they need to start with the recognition that even before Obamacare subsidized coverage, it actually drove up the cost of coverage. So the first thing Congress should do is look at repealing, at least in those states where the court ruling would have effect, repealing the parts of Obamacare that drive up the cost of coverage such that people have trouble paying for it and need subsidies, et cetera. That's a good place to start.
Okay. Ed Heiselmeyer with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you very much for your time today, sir.
Thank you.